this week.
Well,
Next week.
Let's
Monday
get Paul
night.
Domowitch up here and see if the Eagles can get their passing game together. Domo, if you look at the stats, and I was looking at the Paul Domowitch stat pack on JAKIB Media, JAKIB Sports is pointing, and you pointed out that the Eagles have given up a whole bunch of touchdown passes so far this year. Not good. Johnny Mac saying you're moving against the Bucs, not on the ground. You're not. So we're going to see an air raid between Jalen Hurts and Baker Mayfield. Is that what's going to happen on Monday night, Domo?
Well, I think they got to mix it up a little bit more. They can't do. I mean, there isn't going to be a 48 carry game against the Bucs, like John said. This is a defense that can handle the run pretty well. I mean, I think they can have some success against them, but they got to do some other things. Now, they got to get the ball to Dallas Goedert. I mean, they're going to see probably nothing but zone from Todd Bowles, and that's what everybody else has been playing against them, so that they not only can confuse Jalen a little bit on passing, but also everybody's got eyes on Jalen, so he's got nowhere to run. They're playing man, they turn their backs, he's gone. So that's one of the things we've seen in these first two games is Jalen's had nowhere to run. So they got to do a lot of things better this week.
Yeah. Nick, a lot of people brought up the playoff game, and the Bucs won that game 31-15, and it wasn't that close. They played in the regular season. It seemed closer on paper. It wasn't that close either. But no Tom Brady. I mean, this team is 2-0. I don't think many people expected him to be 2-0. And I do think the defense is still pretty good, Damo, in Tampa. But, I mean, it's Baker Mayfield. It's a weak offensive line other than Tristan Wirfs, and even him, they're moving from right tackle to left tackle, seems to be handling it pretty well. This is a game the Eagles should, put some of those bad memories in the back pocket. But I do think it's going to have to be with the pass. I mean, we know Jason Kelce's going to the Hall of Fame, but he has trouble moving big guys. And big centers have trouble moving Vita Vea. The linebackers can run sideline to sideline. You got Antoine Winfield supporting. He's like his dad when it comes to tackling and run support. They've been good for 5 years. Like the Eagles have been good against the run for 2 weeks. They've been good against the run for 5 years. I think one is more important. So I think it's an A.J. Brown week. You mentioned Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith. And the Eagles want to get this going. I think it makes too much sense.
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned Vita Vea. Yeah, Jason Kelce's probably going to be going into the Hall of Fame at some point here. And he's had his ups and downs with Vita Vea. I mean, Vea's a hell of a player. So, I think they can have some success, because if they can have some passing success, then it screws Tampa Bay up, a lot, because they can't focus on one part of it.
You got to pass the run, though. You're not going to run the pass. That's how I should phrase it. Yeah.
Well, one thing they haven't had much success. I don't know. Teams are just going to keep playing umbrella coverage. They'll probably see it again this week. So, teams are not going to let them throw deep. Doesn't mean they won't be able to. It's just going to be difficult, which is why, they need to do some stuff underneath. That's why I think Goddard needs to be a factor. They can use him as a drive starter. Those simple 6-yard routes that turn a 1st and 10 into a 2nd and 2 rather than a 2nd and 8, which is what they've been looking at a lot. But Jalen needs to make better decisions than he's been making. You look at the Minnesota game, it's second highest completion percentage of his career, but he just doesn't seem comfortable in the pocket. He's been sacked 7 times, and a few of them are his. He's just not patient back there, and I'm not sure why. This line hasn't brought its A game yet as far as pass protection, but still, Jalen knows he can trust it. He knows this is one of the best offensive lines in the league, so you would think he'd be a little bit more patient. I don't know what's going on there, but they've had 11 days to prepare for this team. Brian Johnson's, he needs to bring his A game as far as play calling this week. They've done a lot of self-scouting, so they know what they've done wrong in the first 2 games. So, I mean, if they don't come out here against Tampa and throw the ball well, I don't know when they will, because, when you've got nearly 2 weeks to prepare and it doesn't happen, then that's when you get concerned more so than after 2 games.
Let me follow up on one guy you specifically mentioned. You said, get it to Dallas Goedert for those 6-yard games so you're in 2nd and 4. Last game, they got it to Dallas Goedert 6 times for 22 yards. Again, I'm not great at math, but that's under 3. That's not a 6-yard game, Damo. That's a 2.8-yard game. That's not going to get it done. What has it been about Goddard play calling first 2 weeks, Jalen getting the ball fast or too fast or whatever? Goddard did get a bunch of catches, but he hadn't got diddly squat for yards.
Well, it's almost 4 yards, Jody. It's almost 4 yards a game. That's tremendous.
Come on. What seems to be the problem with Dallas Goedert and his not being able to get downfield?
Yeah. I mean, they're focused on him clearly, as well as the outside receivers. But, I mean, somebody's got to be open. But, Dallas last year led all tight ends in yards after the catch and yards per catch. But in the Vikings game, you mentioned the 6 for 22. He had 8 yards after the catch. 8. I mean, that's just embarrassing. And it's not his fault. Every time he caught the ball, there was somebody draped all over him. So, I mean, that's where play design comes in here. I mean, that's what they've, have been spending these last week and change doing, trying to figure out, ways to get him open, ways to get the deep ball out. We'll see. I agree with John. This is Tampa has a terrific defense, but I mean, this is the week this offense needs to come into its own and be what it was last year.
With Brian Johnson, because he's taken a lot of heat, I thought he did a good job against Minnesota. I thought, they came in with a plan and they got some curveballs from Brian Flores and they adjusted on the fly and said, all right, you're going to play these light boxes. What Shane used to do. He did the same thing against Green Bay. You're going to keep doing this? We're going to keep running the football. And they just went inside zone basically to the finish line. I think that's good. I think that's a positive. And now Jalen was talking yesterday, Damo. He gave his, when did the main thing not become the main thing, which is winning football games. But it seems like offensively, and we're going to talk about the defense because you did a nice job. Like they're giving up a ton of touchdowns through the air early. Pass defense has been very poor statistically. That doesn't seem to be a problem. But on the offense, style points seems to be a problem. Why do you think that is?
Well, because, everybody saw what this offense was capable of last year. 3rd in the league in scoring, 46% third down percentage. They were a team that there aren't too many teams that were able to run and pass as well as the Eagles last year. You stopped one or slowed down one, they beat you the other way. And then you had Jalen, who could run. Their RPO averages this year, John, are I don't have the numbers in front of me, but like last year they averaged, I want to say 9.4 yards per RPO play. That's both run and pass. This year it's it's below 4 right now.
Wow.
Because teams are playing zone. They're mixing up their fronts.
Yeah.
They're staying in their gaps. They're doing it. You watched Jalen when he does some of those zone reads. There's somebody there. There's nowhere to run. They're taking away those big running lanes he had last year, and that kind of triggers everything else that's been going wrong so far. I agree with Jalen. They're 2-0, and that's the important thing. But that's what you do. I mean, that's what Nick Sirianni's been doing. I mean, he's looking at those two games and saying this isn't good enough because we have to improve. Now, I talked to Mike Quick the other day. Mike Quick blames most of it on the fact that they didn't play in the preseason. The starters didn't, and these two games have been their preseason. To some degree, I think he's correct. But to others, I think you've had Belichick and Flores, who had an entire offseason, like every other coordinator in this league, to prepare for this offense, to come up with a way to defend it that they didn't last year. And that's I think one of the things we're seeing here.
Yeah.
You know why I don't buy that, Damo? And you know that, well, I know John knows, and you're on often enough that I'm a proponent of actually, I don't know, like practicing in preseason, although the Eagles seem to want to do less of that than maybe any other team in the National Football League. The reason I don't buy it is they got 9 of their 11 starters back. The only change is at running back and at right guard. And, oh, by the way, right guard has looked pretty good. I've not seen that big a drop-off from Isaac Seumalo to Cam Jurgens. So if you filled one of the holes significantly well enough for the first 2 games, the only change you made was running back. You got 10 out of the same 11 guys. They can't remember back to last year. What they do all offseason that had to forget how successful they were last year. I thought they needed much more work on the defensive side of the ball during the offseason than the offensive side of the ball. So I'm not giving them a pass because, they didn't get enough practice time in. They should still be able to be the same offense they were last year.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I think the one thing I'll say is, I want my quarterback to get hit in the preseason. I don't want him coming into the first game in week 1 not having really taken a good lick, because I just think that's important. Mike doesn't think, despite what Nick has said about, I may have to reevaluate next year. He doesn't think Nick means that. I mean, he thinks he meant it then. He thinks that if they play, if they have a good year, they go to the playoffs, deep into the playoffs next year, you won't see the starters play
Same
again.
Exact thing. I agree with you, Mike.
Now, I'm going to give you a Charlie Weiss thing that always stuck with me. I was talking to Charlie once, Damo, and when he was coaching at Notre Dame, he would talk about, they would play Navy every year. It's like, you can't prepare for Navy. You got 1 week. That's it. So you look like, at times, you look really bad. Now, ultimately, Notre Dame would out-talent them. But there were times where they looked terrible because you can't spend a lot of time practicing for the triple option because nobody else runs it unless you're, there's a couple teams but you get the point. So it's like, we got 1 week to figure this thing out, and you kind of look a little bit goofy. Brian Flores specifically, not like that. There's nothing like that in the NFL. But compared to everybody else, he's like way off the page. That's why I like him. He leads the league in blitzing, and he leads the league in 8-man coverages. Same team. Yeah. He throws, what I'm trying to say is, he throws some wacky stuff out there. And you're not going to see that every week. And it does make you uncomfortable. Kelsey called it chaos. They're throwing chaos at us. And I think as it slowly settles down to more conventional defenses, I think the Eagles will look better. Or am I giving them too much credit?
No, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think you're probably right. I don't think they're going to see too many teams that are as unafraid to throw cover zeros at them, blitz zeros as Flores is. This offense is just too good not to make improvement over these first 2 games. So I'm not terribly concerned. Jalen's, I'm sure, taking it personally and is going to, has been, he knows what he's not doing right and what he's, so, they'll straighten it out. I think that's why I think this game is so important, because they're playing a good defense, but they've had 11 days to prepare. So, that's if they're playing, a horrible defense, you can't put too much credence in what might happen. But if they can go out there this week against Tampa and play well offensively, they can build on that.
All right, Damo, need your take on the Eagles' diva wide receiver. And I'm calling it diva wide receiver for this week. He can lose the diva tag in 48, 72 hours, somewhere thereabouts. But after talking to the media yesterday and trying to spin, well, I was too upset to talk to you guys on Sunday, but it was nothing. If you're too upset to talk to us, how is it nothing there, big guy? So I wasn't buying what he was selling yesterday, but I don't think AJ's going to be a continued problem going forward. Or should I? Wide receiver's a wide receiver. He's surely not alone. He would just be joining the wide receiver diva club in the National Football League. But this isn't going to fester or become an issue for the Eagles over the course of the year, is it?
I can't imagine it will be. I mean, for God's sakes, this is the godfather of his daughter throwing him the ball. I mean, if you're gonna pull a Terrell Owens versus Donovan McNabb on the godfather of your child, there's no hope. No, I think he was frustrated, clearly. I watched it several times, trying to see what, get a gauge on Jalen's reaction. He just kind of like let him have his say. Probably said, "I hear you." I don't think it's going to fester.
No, he called it Nick called it a 2 out of a 10. He called it a half of a 1, so 0.5. Interesting way to say 0.5, but I do think it was more than that, but not because of the argument or that kind of stuff happens, and you need to have, AJ explained, you need to have uncomfortable conversations, accountability, all that kind of stuff, which I agree with. But I think it revealed, Damo, that they're really tightly wound, this group, because AJ talks to us all the time. He's got no problem talking. He bolted out of the locker room. Nick had that, I don't know. What are you talking about? Like the Amazon camera. Everybody caught it, and it was our buddy Tim McManus who brought up, well, you were on TV talking to them. What'd you say? And then he had to address it. So that to me, and by the way, it took him, it was like a loss when it came to opening up the locker room. Typically after a win, everybody's happy. The thing opens up after the 10. No, it was like a loss. It was like they lost the game. I think they're tightly wound and the expectations are there. Nick kind of talked about that a little bit yesterday. I think for the most part, they do a good job ignoring it, but you can't, that stuff seeps in, don't you think?
Yeah. And here's the deal. I mean, as everyone knows, there's one ball. They've got two of the best wide receivers in the league, and then you add Goddard on top of that.
And now DeAndre's got to get the ball, and everybody's got to get the ball, and they wanted Bijan Robinson, but there's one football. I've been talking about it since the Bijan days. Yeah, and
Devontae. I mean, AJ can say how close he and Devontae are, and they are. I mean, but still, they're competitive. And there's more at stake here. I mean, you can go and look at the fact that AJ's guaranteed money runs out after 2024. So, he's looking towards the future. He wants to be here. Devontae wants to be here. One of them's probably going to be gone. If I had to guess, it's going to be AJ. I mean, they're looking at 2 more years together. And then there's probably going to be a situation where the cap just isn't going to allow you to have 2 receivers making that kind of money. So, those things play into what's happening. I don't think it's at the forefront. I think it'll get worked out for now, but it'll always be there. I mean, that's the way and plus the mentality of wide receivers is like, they're crazy. I mean, it's, this doesn't happen in any other position. These guys just that's just the way they're. You mentioned the way the team's tightly wound. I mean, every wide receiver in this league is tightly wound.
Right. So, even when things are going well, agree with you on that. I want to jump back over to defense for a second because we haven't focused enough on the fact that the Eagles linebackers are two big question marks right now. Last week, both weeks, tight end touchdowns, probably linebackers in coverage. This was not the linebacking core that we thought we were going to get. Well, Nicholas Morrow was signed to be the starting linebacker, and then he was cut. And he came back to the practice squad. Now he's back in starting again. So the Nicholas Morrow dynamic has gone up and down and up and down and up and down.
It's like
we're all wondering about how they're going to replace Avonte Maddox. Should they be looking to upgrade at linebacker right now?
Well, I mean, they're going to be getting Kobe Dean back in 2 games, theoretically.
I don't know. I heard
you know that?
4 to 6 weeks. So
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, John has a better feel for it than I do. So I don't know.
It might be.
I don't think it's totally the linebackers. I mean, safeties too. I mean, the middle of the field's just been a fertile area for opposing offenses. I think in their mind they feel that everything's going to work out if, and then you add to that the fact that Avonte Maddox is gone now too. So, and those are things that Maddox isn't coming back. So now they got to figure out what to do about that. I mean, I think that's a bigger problem than linebacker, John, Jody, because I don't know that you really want to move Bradbury inside.
Everybody wants to move him inside, Dama. Why? Explain it to me.
I know, and this week it would be fine because Mike Evans plays inside a lot. Mike Evans is 6'3", a big corner going against a big wide receiver. But most slot guys are smaller. You got to be, inside. You got to be quickness with a exceptional change of direction, and you have to know what you're doing inside. Avonte did. He just couldn't stay healthy. So I don't think, if you ask me right now what trade they need to make before the deadline, my feeling is it's position wise, it's to get corner. Yeah.
Now, if I'm Tampa Bay, and because I've heard it a lot, Evans is playing more in the slot. So I looked it up. He's played exactly 100 snaps. He's played 15 in the slot, so he's still outside way more. But if they did want him to move inside, well, then I just pick on Josh Jobe outside if you want to do that. And by the way, I'm moving Evans. So, all right, if they're going to play Bradbury in the slot, I'm going to move him outside and put Chris Godwin in the slot and vice versa, because Chris Godwin can play in the slot and is really effective. Now, I don't know if they're savvy enough to do that or Baker Mayfield's good enough to take advantage of that type of situation. But my larger point, Tomo, is he's an all-pro outside corner. At what point does Howie go, I'm not paying $13 million for a stinking slot corner? He's an all-pro outside corner. Play him outside. Now, I think they are going to play him outside. But if they don't, I think it's fair to criticize this defensive plan. I'm not taking up all-pro outside corner and putting him in the slot. It doesn't make sense to me, Damo. Make it make sense.
I can't. That's why I agree with you. I don't think it'll happen. You don't take a guy like Bradbury and move him inside where he's not nearly as effective and as good. So, I mean, I think they're putting everything on their pass rush. They feel like pass rush can erase all other ills. And so far, the pressures are exceptionally high. The sacks aren't, only 4, because Mac Jones was getting the ball out, I think, like 0.1 second after
he was sped up, man.
Kirk Cousins doesn't. I mean, that's not the way he operates, but even he was getting it out quicker than usual. Baker's the same way. Baker's a guy that for most of his career has hung on to the ball, and it's been his downfall. Well, they've clearly have told him, you need to get it out. He's only been sacked once this year so far. You've got to make him hold the ball. You've got to stay on his receivers early, and so make him look for that second read. So we'll see what happens this week. I'm not a big believer in Baker Mayfield, so I think they're going to just hammer him this week. I think their sack total is going to, I think they'll have about 4 of them this week and a lot of pressures. And I think they'll force Baker into a couple turnovers.
Yeah, they always get a lot of pressures. Yeah.
Domo, the Devontae Maddox loss is a significant one from the Eagles. I think we all agree that. But it's not as significant as Trayvon Diggs going down for the Cowboys.
Oh, that is a brutal. Yeah, that's a bad injury.
Yeah.
The Cowboys, good luck trying to replace him. We're debating on whether you do or don't move Bradbury into the slot and the like. All right, fine. They don't have anybody coming off the bench. It's going to be Trayvon Diggs for them. So I would say for the Eagles, if you're worried about, the injury bug is biting us, it's biting Dallas harder than it is Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. That's why I said, as good as Dallas, I said that this week, I feel like I jinxed them. Not that Eagles fans care, but they look so good the first 2 weeks. But you have one injury at the wrong position. I mentioned Micah and Tony Pollard. I mean, they don't have anything at running back. Diggs as well. One injury can affect you that much. But I'll leave it here with you at P Damo. Make sure you follow Paul, his stat package up at JAKIBsports.com. Now, you led this week with the Eagles pass defense, and it hasn't been good. Now, part of that is injury related. Bradbury was out with the concussion. Reed was out with the rib injury. Avante, we know, got knocked out. But the Eagles are giving up a lot of touchdown passes, a lot of yardage. Now, part of it is they're ahead and teams can't run against them. So you factor that all in. But I'm not in love with this pass defense, and they seem to be getting a pass. And I brought that up with the offense. Everybody's all over the offense. The defense, we're winning games. Are you concerned with this pass defense? Because I'm with you. They're putting everything on this defensive front.
Yeah.
Either they perform or it's going to be bad.
No, I mean, I am concerned watching these first 2 games. I put a lot of credence in how you play both offensively and defensively on third down and in the red zone. Well, in these first 2 games, the defense has been horrible on both. Kirk Cousins, the Vikings were 4 for 4 in the red zone touchdown rate wise. All 4 touchdowns came on Cousins touchdown passes. Third down, same thing. They're I think Cousins, like 6 of his 7 completions were produced first downs. Teams are converting third and longs because of their success through the air. I mean, that's got to change or it'll be their downfall. I mean, this is a terrific rush. And I think Jalen Carter, I mentioned this and I was kind of caught up in the moment, but I mean, I think ultimately right now you can look at Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and actually see and don't laugh, but you could see Reggie White and Jerome Brown.
No, people, I've been here, you know why? Because Seth said compare Jalen Carter to Jerome Brown. And I said, and I'm the same as you. I said, look, people are going to get mad at me, but Jalen Carter's way more athletic than Jerome Brown. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be that player because a lot more comes into it, but just the pure athleticism. I mean, Jalen Carter's just unbelievable. The size and that speed.
And Jordan Davis is not far behind athletic wise. That's what I mean. I remember talking to Tom Brady years ago and talking to Mike Mayock, when he was with the NFL Network, about quarterbacks he had talked to. And the thing that scared them all, the thing that they hated most, was a team that could rush the interior, that could put pressure on you inside. You got nowhere to run. Yeah. I mean, they're coming right at you. You can dodge edge rushers no matter how good they are. You step up if there's a pocket. So, I mean, that is going to be pivotal with this pass rush. But, what we're seeing right now is teams, you're going to see it this week. Baker's going to try to get the ball out quickly. They've got to figure out a way to make him hold it. If they can, they win this game probably comfortably. If they can't, Mike Evans might have 13 catches for 180 yards.
For a guy who's got an issue with his contract, He sure doesn't
He's-
show it.
he's
Maybe
playing
AJ.
well.
Can we get AJ talking to Mike Evans before the
Yeah.
game? That might be a good.
By the
idea.
way, Mike won't get 13 for 180 if the Eagles keep Bradbury outside. Now, if they move him inside, he might get 13 for 180.
If they
There
move
you
him
go.
inside, it might be because the Bucs have moved Evans inside. So you might see a traveling situation in that one. Damo, it's always a pleasure, brother. Great job on the stat pack this week. Thank you for jumping on. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Thanks,
Paul
Tom.
Domowitch, 33rd team and JAKIBsports.com. Check out his Friday stuff. Is always great for not only Eagles, but taking a peek for the entire week in the National Football League. All right, Jody Mac coming back. Tommy Lawler from EaglesBlitz.com going to join us in about 20 here on Birds 365.